The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the village of Olomé, a place nestled on the edge of the great forest, where the spirits of ancestors walked among the trees and whispered through the wind. Here, people lived in harmony with the natural world, guided by the wisdom of elders and the teachings passed down through generations. Kofi, however, was different. He believed in progress, in modern solutions, and often questioned the old ways. Amina, the village's spiritual healer, was a woman of great wisdom, revered by all. She warned Kofi that tampering with the ancient land would come at a cost. But Kofi, desperate to help the village through a brutal drought, sought to build an irrigation system using the sacred wood of the Tree of Life at the heart of the forest. He believed modern methods could fix what ancient prayers could not, ignoring the sacred laws of the forest. With axes in hand, Kofi and a group of villagers set off to cut down the tree. As the tree fell, the earth trembled and a deep voice rumbled from the depths of the forest, warning them of the consequences of their actions. The spirit of the forest emerged, its eyes glowing with fury, condemning Kofi's arrogance and the disturbance of the balance between man and nature. The spirit declared that the price for their actions would be steep, and the village would suffer as the drought continued, the crops withering and the land turning barren. Kofi, consumed by guilt and desperation, pleaded for a way to fix the damage, but the spirit's wrath was unyielding. The villagers, weakened by illness and despair, turned against Kofi, blaming him for the suffering they endured. Amina, knowing the price could not be avoided, told Kofi that only a sacrifice could restore the balance, a life for the life of the land. Kofi, understanding the gravity of his mistake, ventured alone into the forest to offer himself to the spirit. As he stood before the Tree of Life, the spirit, though still formidable, recognized Kofi's humility and willingness to sacrifice himself. With his final act of selflessness, the spirit accepted the offering, and the balance was restored. The land began to heal, the drought lifted, and the village slowly returned to life. The crops flourished again, and the villagers regained their strength, but Kofi was never seen again. His sacrifice was not forgotten, and his story became a lesson passed down through generations, a reminder of the consequences of arrogance, the importance of respecting the natural world, and the humility required to restore balance when it is disrupted. Seasons changed, and the village of Olomé blossomed into a beacon of life and wisdom. Still, in the heart of every villager lived the memory of that day, when arrogance almost ended everything. It was no longer spoken of with bitterness, but with reverence, like the memory of an ancestor whose sacrifices gave life to generations. The great Tree of Life grew stronger with every passing year, its bark gleaming under the sun as though it held the essence of the old spirits within it. At night, the elders would say, the tree hummed, a low, gentle vibration that seeped into the dreams of those who slept nearby. Some said it was the voice of Kofi himself, watching over them, whispering lessons to the dreamers and reminding them that respect must be constantly renewed, not merely remembered. Children who were born after the drought often found themselves drawn to the tree without understanding why, their small hands touching the bark with awe and a strange familiarity, as though greeting an old friend. But the land was not free from challenges. As the village grew in knowledge and prosperity, outsiders began to hear of Olomé's marvels. Traders came, then scholars, and finally, men with heavy boots and shining tools who spoke of carving roads through the sacred forests, of building schools and hospitals where trees and rivers lived. At first, the villagers welcomed them, hoping to share their hard-earned wisdom with the world. But it soon became clear that these outsiders did not see the land as sacred. They saw it only as resources to be taken, problems to be solved by force. Amina's successor, a fierce young woman named Naya, stood against them. Naya had been born on the night of the first festival of remembrance and was said to carry Kofi's spirit in her veins. She had hair as wild as the vines that curled around the forest's oldest trees, and a voice that could still the river's song when she spoke. She met with the outsiders beneath the Tree of Life and told them that if they wished to stay, They must first listen to the forest. They must sit in silence until they could hear its heartbeat. They must walk barefoot upon the earth and offer something of their own spirit in return for every leaf they plucked. Many laughed and left. But a few stayed. They shed their boots, their arrogance, and slowly, carefully, they began to learn. They learned that not every solution was built with concrete and steel, that sometimes the greatest healing came from patience, from humility, from knowing when to act and when to simply be. Meanwhile, Kofi's spirit journeyed deeper into the ancestral realms. There, he was not punished nor shunned. Instead, he was welcomed as one who had erred and learned, who had fallen and risen, who had given himself for the greater good. Among the ancestors, he found wisdom that no book could teach, lessons carved into the very fabric of existence. They taught him the songs of the stars, the language of stones, the dreams of rivers. They showed him that true leadership was not about power, but about service, about holding space for others to grow, about sacrificing one's own glory for the flourishing of all life. In rare moments, when the veil between worlds thinned, on nights when the stars fell like rain, or the earth trembled with unseen dances, Kofi's spirit would brush against the waking world, a gust of wind bending the fields just so, a flash of light among the trees, a dream so vivid it felt like memory. Naya often felt his presence strongest when she stood before the tree of life. She would close her eyes, feel the pulse beneath her feet, and know that Kofi was with them still, guiding, protecting, loving. Under Naya's guidance, Olome entered a golden era. The village became a place of pilgrimage not only for seekers, but for leaders from distant lands, kings and queens who came not to conquer but to learn. They sat humbly on mats woven from reeds, listening to the stories of Olome's rebirth. They returned to their own lands with new wisdom. That prosperity without respect was hollow. That strength without humility was weakness. That growth without gratitude would wither. But the greatest test came many years later, when the river, once vibrant and strong, began to falter again. This time, it was not from drought, but from poison, carried by the careless industries of a faraway city. The water darkened. The fish floated lifeless on its surface. Panic gripped the village. Memories of the old drought awakened like ghosts from a long-forgotten grave. People turned to Naya, desperate for answers. Naya, though still young, carried the weight of many lifetimes within her. She gathered the villagers under the tree of life and spoke. We must not act from fear. Fear leads to anger, and anger blinds the heart. We must act from love, for the river, for the earth, for ourselves. They held ceremonies by the river, offering songs and prayers, but the poison did not abate. So they took action, not with violence, but with wisdom. They planted grasses that drank toxins from the water. They built natural barriers to filter the runoff. They journeyed to the city, and with quiet strength demanded change. It was a slow, grueling battle, but through persistence and unity, they began to heal the wound. Throughout it all, they remembered Kofi's lesson, that true restoration required sacrifice, patience, and faith. That night, after the first clean waters flowed again into the village, Naya sat beneath the tree of life, her face lifted to the stars. She sang an old song, one that Amina had once taught her, one that spoke of journeys and returns, of mistakes and forgiveness, of a love so deep it could transform death into life. The forest listened. The spirits listened. And in the great endless silence between the stars, a boy who had once felled a sacred tree listened too, and smiled. Thus, the tale of Olome grew, like vines wrapping a strong trunk, with new chapters born of each new generation. And always at its heart was the memory of one who could not save her, the land, the people, but who, in the end, saved them all. Years later, under a sky so clear that every star shimmered like a prayer, a small boy named Kojo sat at the base of the great tree of life. He was no older than 7, with curious eyes and a heart too big for his tiny chest. Kojo had heard the story of Kofi countless times, from his grandmother, from the storytellers who gathered around evening fires, from the very songs carried by the night wind. But Kojo had a question that had never left him. He placed his small palm against the bark of the tree, feeling the ancient pulse beneath his skin, and whispered, "Why do people have to make mistakes to learn?" The leaves above rustled softly, and for a moment Kojo thought he heard laughter, not mocking, but kind, like the chuckle of an old friend who knows all your foolishness and loves you still. The air grew warm, and a dream drifted into his mind, a dream where he saw Kofi, not as the tragic figure described in stories, but as a young man with gentle eyes, strong arms, and a heart blazing with hope. In the dream, Kofi knelt before the tree of life, just as Kojo did now, and said, "Because, little one, the deepest lessons are not given. They are lived. They are etched into our souls through the fire of our E."